Hi. Good evening, everybody. I mean, you guys have no idea how excited, how happy I am to be here, how thankful I am. I just had one of those moments last night where I just had one of those real encounters with God. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, those real deep moments. You see, yesterday was one of those days where it was a long day, and you get home and you're just like, man, I'm definitely going to go to bed early tonight. And so I was sitting on the couch and I was just unwinding and I was just talking to God. I was like, this is everything I did today, and these are some of my concerns and some of my struggles. And I fell asleep on this couch. Here I am, I fell asleep on the couch. And 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm awoken. And there's this heavy rain. I don't know if you guys live in the area, but last night around that time, 1:32 in the morning, there was some heavy rain. And the wind was going crazy. And so I woke up and I was like, what is that? And as I'm kind of like waking up, I just get like this little itch right here. And then the most random thought came to my mind. The thought was, God, you could have stopped my heart. Like seriously, God, you could have just stopped my heart right now from beating. I could have stopped breathing. There would be no more time to tell those that I loved them. There would be no more time to do the things that I wanted to do before I go. My heart could have stopped right then and there. And so here I was in the middle of the night, and I was thinking. And I was just pondering, I was just thinking about God, and I was thinking about me, and I was thinking about everything that I am, everything that I do, everything. If there's anything that offends God. It reminded me a little earlier in the week, I was talking to my girlfriend Kate, and we were having the conversation about, the things about each other that bother us. And, she asked me, is there anything about me that bothers you? And I said, yeah. There's a couple of things. There's this one thing, that you sometimes do. And then, there's this one thing where, in those certain situations, not all the time, but you do, and it kind of bothers me. But that's it, I promise you. And then I asked her, what about you? Is there anything that I do that bothers you? She had a list. But it's interesting, because after I told her the things that bothered me, her response was, I know. I know that kind of bothers you. it's just a learning process. I know that bothers you. I don't want to do it anymore. That's the response to love. When you love somebody, when you care about someone so much, you're like, man, what are the things that bother you? And I don't want to do those things anymore. And it kind of reminds me of a story in the Bible in Psalms chapter 139 where, David is talking to God. He's having this moment and he's like, God, you know everything about me. But then I love towards the end of the chapter, Psalms chapter 139, towards the end of the chapter, he says, search me, God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there's anything offensive in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. You see, David asked the same question. He goes, God, what am I doing? Is there anything offensive that I'm doing today that bothers you? What bothers you about me? And then he says, help me to stop it and lead me away. And I want to ask you this evening, if you were to ask God that same question, what do you believe he would say? If you were to ask God and say, God, what is wrong? Is there anything that you look at me? You can see me. Is there anything in me that I'm doing today that bothers you? What do you believe he would say? You see, Jesus says in John chapter 14 and verse 15, chapter 14 and verse 15, that there's a natural response to love. He says that if you love me, you will obey what I command. He says, if you love me, he said, look, these are the things that offend God. He says, these are the things that bother me about you. And if you love me, you will obey what I command. Becomes natural. You know, there's in Romans chapter 6, 7, and 8, it talks about this concept of when you believe in God, when you start to believe in God, when you choose to follow God, you become this slave or this servant to righteousness. You know, when you become this follower, this believer, and when you become this servant to righteousness, you want to do everything that makes him happy. And then when you let him down, when you fall to sin, you feel guilty. Because you're this follower of Jesus. I brought an illustration that hopefully you can follow along with. I brought a couple of drinks, favorite drinks, all American favorite drinks. I brought lemonade. How many of you guys like lemonade? You guys like lemonade? I brought some lemonade here with me. I love lemonade. And I brought Frappuccino. How many of you guys like Frappuccino? You guys like Frappuccino? It's okay, I won't judge you. So I brought Frappuccino, I brought lemonade, and I brought this Frappuccino. And I better shake it up. And so I have the lemonade. I have this lemonade. I love lemonade. And I love Frappuccino. You see, this is the way some of you are today. I truly believe that you love Jesus. But there are also some certain sins, and as my mic is falling off, there are some certain sins in which you also love. And you go back and forth in your life, and you wonder why you're so miserable. And you're thinking, well, you know, I don't go back and forth between God and my sin. And you know, some of you, but you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, Lord, I love you. Naked girls on the internet. I want to get in your word today. I hate her. Hello, brother. Happy Sabbath. I love you. I smoke pot. And you guys go back and forth, and you wonder why you're so miserable, and you go back and forth. You're like, well, I don't go back between God and sin and God and sin. You know, I have this life with God, and I just have this little bit of sin in which, you know, and you know, there's this, you know, and it's just sick. And you say, I don't go back and forth. You know, I just have this life 90% God and just a little bit of sin. And you wonder why you're so miserable. I don't want to tell you that there's no better feeling. There's no better feeling than when you're just right with God. You know, when you're so close, you have that intimacy. You repented everything you've done. You've laid down the line, and you're like, God, I feel so close to you. I mean, I can't tell you how many times where I prayed to God, I'm just like, shut up. God just answered my prayer, and this is amazing, and I feel so close to you right now. But sometimes we like to add something. We like to hold on to a certain sin. And we know that it's not right. And we hold on to it anyways, and it makes us miserable. I mean, seriously, sometimes, you know, we just got to be real with God. Guys, I don't know what's going on in your lives. I don't know where you're at. And, but if Jesus were to walk in today, and if you were to look at each and every one of you and say, do you love me? What do you think he would say? What do you think he would say? Do your actions show that you love Jesus? Does what you say outside of here show that you love Jesus? When you're alone in that room, when you're alone in even church, does what you do testify that you love Jesus? Revelation chapter 3, God is talking to this church of Sardis, and he's saying, you have this reputation for being so alive. You have this reputation for having this strong relationship with Jesus, and you're so strong and perfect with Him. You have this reputation, but deep down inside, I know you're dead. You see, we all have this reputation. I'm standing before you, I'm speaking, I'm standing here as an elder in the church, I lead young people, but when push comes to shove, that reputation goes away. I still have to stand before God and answer to Him. You could be the best singer up here, the best musician, you could be studying to be the best doctor, the businessman, but if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, I want you guys to close your eyes with me. Close your eyes, and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to pray. But I want you to pray the kind of prayer that David prayed to God. Where he says, see if there's anything that is offensive in me. Is there anything that I'm doing that bothers you, God? And I don't want you to make these promises like, God, I promise I'll never do this again. Or God, I vow to stop this one as soon as I get home from this evening's program. I don't want you to say that. I want you to say, God, lead me away into this everlasting life. Lead me away. Driving. There are these things. I feel so guilty. I feel like I'm living a double life. Whenever I'm at church, I feel guilty because my sin is with me. And whenever I'm in my sin, I feel guilty because the Holy Spirit's with me. God, I'm tired of going back and forth. God, please lead me. Give me the power. The power to walk away.